Hey guys, it's Marshall here with Marshall's Guitar Lessons, and in this video we're going to look at some phrasing concepts and how to use phrasing to spice up your solos. So let's grab a guitar and get to it. So what is musical phrasing? Well, simply put, musical phrasing is just how you group notes together in music. And there's a few things that I think are important to remember and keep in mind when you're thinking about musical phrasing. And these aren't in any particular order, and this certainly isn't an exhaustive list, but here's just a few. Number one, it can be very complicated or it can be very simple. So your phrasing, you could have a bunch of 64th and 32nd notes and a bunch of complicated time signature changes and a bunch of interesting dotted rests and things like that. Or it could be very simple. You could just have quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes, very simple rhythms. But generally speaking, somewhere in the middle is probably best. Maybe having some parts of your solo or of your song being more simplistic, some parts of it being a little bit more complicated and melodic. Another thing to keep in mind is you want to avoid repetition. Some repetition is good, and I'll make a video on that. Sometimes it's good to have repetition and then resolve to something else. But if you're just playing the exact same lick over and over and over for a solo, it's not going to sound very good. And finally, sometimes rests or not playing anything at all actually speaks louder than the actual notes that you're playing. Sometimes it's good to build tension by just not playing anything at all and having a little gap between your notes. So let me talk really quick before I cut to my guitar about a concept that I constantly keep in my mind when I'm thinking about musical phrasing and soloing. So when I create a solo, I like to think of myself as being sort of like a director of a movie. And I'm trying to create an entire story, an entire film in 30 seconds to a minute, or however long your solo lasts. And I'm only allowed to use two characters in this movie, and they can only communicate using licks and using runs and scales. And they have to communicate back in a call and response manner. So character 1 talks, and then character 2 responds, and then it goes back to character 1, and so on and so forth as this movie progresses. And each of these two characters, they have their own personality, they have their own tone, they have their own way of speaking, and this really plays into the movie to make it very organic sounding. And it's also important to make sure that these characters fit the feel of the song. You know, if it's a very emotional, like a ballad, very emotional song, maybe you want to have more emotional characters. Maybe they talk more quietly or more subtle. Maybe it's a little bit more legato sounding. The notes are more strung together rather than being chopped apart. If it's a very dramatic or suspenseful song, maybe you want to have a lot of pauses between the call and response of the two characters, or maybe it's very staccato, a lot of choppy notes. And also, in this movie, you have to have musical pauses. There has to be times where the two characters aren't speaking. You see this a lot in movies. If the whole movie was just 3 hours of two people talking, one person talks, and then immediately after the second person talks, and it just does this for 3 hours, no one would go to it. It'd be a horrible movie. There has to be time in between. There has to be a pause for the listener to interpret what the speaker just said and to create some drama between the two characters. Makes it a lot more lifelike and a lot more organic. And this principle, if you can apply it to the guitar for your solos, 9 times out of 10, actually probably even more than that, it will sound very lifelike, it'll sound very organic, and it'll sound great. It'll tell a great story. So this might be a little abstract to think about. So I'm going to cut to my guitar really quick and show you what this looks like. And I'll annotate down in the bottom left-hand corner with a red square every time character 1 is talking. And every time there's a response with character 2, I'll put a blue square in the bottom right to help your mind sort of differentiate and see what I'm talking about with this call and response. So let's cut to my guitar and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright guys, I made a little loop on my looper, which is in the key of A. So I'm going to bring that up right now and show you guys kind of this call and response technique. I'd just like to thank you guys again for watching the video and supporting this channel. If you guys enjoyed it, please comment, like, and don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon. Have fun playing guitar.